Hi everyone, I am back and I am working on the binding. So in order to do the binding, I did not cut bias cut binding. I just cut straight binding because it's easier. And instead of the normal width, I am doing 5-inch wide binding. So you need to cut it on here, let me undo this pin. You need to sew it on a diagonal like this. And that way when you're done sewing it, it looks like that. So, I am going through and pinning it to make sure that they're all pinned together. So I'm gonna just do this. And then right sides together. See, right side of fabric, wrong side of fabric. You can see they're different colors. And then you put it on there. And then I will sew it this way so that so you have to sew the correct way. I hope that makes sense, because see, sewing it like this diagonal, right? It's together. But if I were to sew it this diagonal, that's what it would look like, and then it wouldn't be right. See? Can you see that? So that's all. You just need to make sure that you're sewing them length to length, and then the little squares. Does that make sense? So when you chop it off, it's the little square right there, the leftover. And then I did pre-wash these because, again, I am working with vintage material. The quilts, the main part of the quilt, is vintage material, and I don't want it to look silly and have stress points. More stress points than silliness. But this fabric would shrink otherwise, and the quilt's not going to shrink, right? Because the quilt has been pre-washed a zillion times. As you saw, it's old, it's antique. And so then basically I have a pencil here, and I would sew this line, except for, there you go. I'm going to do this a zillion times. Then I will cut off these little excess pieces of fabric, and then I will sew them on. So when I actually sew them on to the quilt, what I'm going to do is, let me move some stuff. I'm working in a tight space here, and I don't even know if you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay, great. You saw me just drop one. It doesn't matter. So I washed them, right? They're all washed. They're ironed. They're ironed in half. Then I'm going to sew them. And then after I'm done with all that, I will attach them. So what I'll probably do, because I don't want to hand stitch the binding on, because that's a pain in the, hand stitching. And I've already done enough hand stitching for my life right now on this project. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come along and I am going to sew this binding on this side. Then when I'm done sewing it on, I will go to the other side because it will be sewed on here. Here, let me just pretend. Here you go. It's sewn. It's sewn. And then once I'm done sewing it here, I will just go on the other side, fold it over, and sew it. There we go. And that's what it'll look like. It'll be bound like that. Hopefully you can see why I did the 5-inch, because then it's, you know, wider. So if I had done a lot of bindings are like 2.5 inch. So if you do a 2.5 inch binding, then it's like this big, right? And then you sew like, you have like a tiny little binding. So like it would just be like 1/4 of an inch, and then you barely pull it over like that. And I wanted a bigger one because the other side is all like funky. Does that make sense? Maybe. I don't know. There are places where I didn't mend very well because I knew I was going to use a bigger binding. So like right here, I left a hole. Right here, I just left it kind of stitched and didn't replace this piece of fabric. It's fine. It has been stitched all the way around though by me. See, stitched already once. So hopefully that's good. So this quilt has already been like quilted, and now I'm about to bind it, and this is the color of binding I'm using on it. This turquoise that will kind of match whatever this is over here. It's all wild. It'll be usable. Usable. And I will repeat the same process with the binding on the other quilt. So I've got a big pile of pink ones that again I pre-washed and I have ironed in half. So, and these I did not actually pay attention to what was the inside and what was the outside. So that's my fault because I don't think it matters. They're solid colors. But I did think about that afterwards. I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't pay attention to that. But I can't tell the inside from the outside, so I'm thinking it's fine. If it fades differently in a couple of million years, I don't care. Right? So the other quilt has been having all of its lines sewn. And so now I'm just binding them near the end of this. So it was a lot of work. A lot of work. That's all I have to say. It's a lot of work. Lots of ironing, lots of pinning, lots of sewing. And so now I will sew. And once I've got these all pinned, I will just sew right there. And I don't think I'm actually going to do the actual sewing of the binding on this machine. I think I'm going to go and use my modern machine just because there's a lot of starts and stops, and this machine has been, whenever I'm stopping and starting, I am getting skipped stitches. And I have tried to rectify it, but it has not been rectifying. So I think that because this is sewing the binding, you do have to stop and start a lot. I think I might switch to a modern machine for that part. Also, I have better gauges so that I can make sure that I'm doing it like, you know, a 1/2 inch or whatever, because this is kind of wobbly anyway, but I did try and trim it down. But I do see places where it's like, yeah, that's not really straight, is it? That's not. See that? That is not. That's not very straight. That's okay. We're going for finished is better than perfect. Right? Right.